Very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, and welcome for my part to the Middle East, because I find myself in the UAE this week. I've been part of the Laureus Challenge 2022 with Force for Good and Sierra Space, not actually trekking myself. I'm still recovering from my snapped Achilles, but part of a really cool event, seeing some remote but beautiful parts of the world with a fairly high-profile team who've been making their way through the UAE over the last few days. Brian Abana leading the South African contingent, Steve Waugh, the Australian cricketer, Sir Chris Hoy, the Olympic gold medal winning cyclist, Steve Lindsay, the astronaut who's been up to space 5 times, fascinating man, Annabelle Bond, the mountaineer extraordinaire, and as of today, Nawal Al-Mutawakel, the first ever Muslim woman to win an Olympic gold medal back in 1984 for Morocco in the 4x100 meter hurdle. So really interesting selection, and the occasional glass of wine in between all of that, but mostly a focus on some fundraising and some focus on some incredible people who have done great things, which leads us rather nicely into today's show, where although I am in the UAE, everybody else is sitting back in South Africa and sitting there with big smiles on faces, because we have a collection of star performers from the latest Prescient Reports with Wine Magazine, and that in partnership with WineMag and with Christian Eedes is what we will be celebrating today. Some terrific winemakers who've made some wine that some very esteemed judges have thought is rather good and have chosen to celebrate as a result. So let's meet our collection of Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon makers extraordinaire, as well as a very familiar face in the form of Christian Eedes. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining me. And collectively, congratulations to all of you, to Cavalli and to Koelenhof and to Oak Valley and to Backsberg and to Delaire Graff. And we'll give you some individual thanks in just a moment. But lovely to have you all on the show, and a very warm welcome. And welcome back, Mr. Christian Eedes. Lovely to have you with us. I won't ask you questions about rugby, because I know that's only going to have steam coming out the ears at the moment. So let's stick to questions about wine and set the scene. It's been a little while since we've had you on with one of the reports. What are our latest 2 reports? And give us a reminder of how these reports work and who's responsible with you for putting them together.
Hi, Dan. So these are our 2 longest running reports. Chard dates back to 2010 and Cab to 2011. We do a series of different reports over the course of the year, category specific. And I suppose you could look at Cab and Chard as the sort of jewels in the crown. Cab, as we all know, is often referred to as the king of grapes, and every king needs a queen, and Chard pretty much fits the bill.
So these are the ones that we've got for this year's report. Who was involved in the judging? Because I know you generally put together quite a sparkling list of people, the architects of these reports.
So on Chard, we had James Peterson and Yolette Stain from Wine Cellar, which is a boutique retailer and cellaring operation in Cape Town. And then on Cab, we had James Peterson again and Maylu Lambert, who's very much an up-and-coming wine writer.
I think fairly well established by now, particularly with the work that she does with you guys. And together you create these reports. Christian, give us a sense of how they work, because not everybody is part of them in terms of the entries, but it's not a case of, well, we judge them based on who else is part of it. You're very much giving these wines their marks on their own merit. So irrespective of who is part of the report, the marks that these wines get, the points that they score, that's reflective of the wine themselves rather than the wine in the context of the competition. Would that be correct?
Dan, I think our defining attribute is that we taste blind, labels out of sight. It would be remiss of me not to mention the sponsors, Prescient, who are a financial services company. They came on board around about 2015, if I'm not mistaken. So they own, if you will, the different reports. And it's open to all comers. And we typically get between 50 and 100 entries per category. As I say, we taste blind. There's no which removes all prejudice. You're judging the wine on its intrinsic merits and nothing else.
All right, well, let's start with the first of those two reports, and that would be the Chardonnay report. It's been an interesting journey for Chardonnay over the years, Christian. There was a time when we were very much a little California, lots of very, very heavily wooded, very buttery types of Chardonnays. There are still examples of those, but there's also a lot more restraint, a lot more elegance, and a lot more fruit-forward style of Chardonnay. And I suspect that's come through a lot in what you guys have judged. Give us a sense of what the entries were like and what you guys were looking for in Chardonnay in 2022.
So, as a panel, we were looking for fruit purity, bright acidities, careful oaking, and I think our top 10 certainly show that. You mentioned the sort of Californian style that was predominant a while back. We saw quite a few of those again. And I'm not sure if that's a reaction to market demand, i.e. consumers actually want a bigger style of Chard, or whether it was vintage dependent. We had by far the majority of entries were from 2020. And I'm uncertain in my own mind whether that might have affected things. Is there anything wrong with that bigger style? I just find them they tend to lack some refreshment. I think we really should be gunning for purity of fruit.
All right. Well, let's see what our producers have given us and how they feel about their inclusion in the report. And congratulations to all of them. Let's start with an estate that I have got a bit of a soft spot for, because it is the estate where I got married 11 years ago this Saturday. Wonderful memories of dancing the night away at Backsberg, which is undergoing a lot of change at the moment, and I think very positive and very exciting change. Alicia, congratulations. Wonderful news. Lovely to be featured so prominently in the report and to have done so well with this Chardonnay. Was it a surprise to get the response that you did from this panel for this particular wine?
It was, yes. Beautiful vineyard from Franschhoek. It was my first blend and bottling of this vineyard, and we've got a lovely 2022 blend already in the barrels, also almost ready to blend. But very different than fruit that I'm used to work with on the estate. Definitely that minerality, that fruitiness, that purity of fruit was just, it's almost like oak would have spoiled it. So it is a barrel fermented. It's 10 months in oak, but older barrels and a smaller percentage new. Beautiful wine, yes.
And one that would suggest using the older barrels, using the still fermentation is very much in the style of letting the fruit tell the story. I think yours is Franschhoek fruit, and of letting that come to the fore, and obviously very successfully, given what the judges felt.
Yeah. It was, I also, it was a bit of it was a blend of the beautiful vineyard and barrels. Yeah, it was also barrels. New barrels for me. It was very. I learned a lot. I must say, on Friday night we were at the function. We were able to taste all the wines, and we really spent some time looking at Chardonnay. I haven't had such a good Chardonnay tasting. And on Monday morning, my palate was so tuned. I came into work and I was able to make my 220 blend as well. And if I now think back, I thought differently after that. It was interesting. I definitely learned something. I think those people that would have, I liked a bit of a heavier oak, but the old Backsberg vineyards also lended themselves to it. It's definitely Franschhoek's fruit is finer. The site is definitely more minerality, more pure fruit. It's very site specific, this vineyard.
I love the fact that you came away so inspired from the tasting and got such a good feel for the Chardonnay as a whole. I also love the fact that you've got a really, really cool name. Tell us a little bit about the name and where that's come from.
Okay, I bought my bottle so we can have a look. So this is the new, can you see my new Backsberg packaging? our whole range has got a lot of innovative stories about Sydney Back. He was very important in the wine industry of South Africa. And part of the Chardonnay Club that brought in the first Chardonnay in the country, that smuggled Chardonnay into the country. So we chose the name Smuggled Wines in memory of that event. If it wasn't for Sydney Back as part of the four, there wouldn't have been Chardonnay. Backsberg also planted the first hillside vineyards in the country. There was a lot of first that was done via Backsberg, and that is what we're celebrating now with the new range and the new wine, Smuggled Wine Chardonnay. We call him Smuggles. So I was very happy about Smuggles, yes.
It is such a great name and such a great story, one of so many in our wine history. I'm going to come back to you, Alicia, before the end of the show, just to get a quick look at where Backsberg is going, because I think you've got a really cool time to look forward to. Let's jump across to another of our star makers of Chardonnay, and the man in his trademark red cap, Morné Vrey. We're seeing more and more, Morné, of people in your part of town where we tend to think, well, this is red wine territory. Surely these are guys who revel in the top of the Bannock Valley and making outstanding red wine. You certainly do that. But along with your neighbors across the road, some of the guys just down the road, we're getting some really good Chardonnay coming out of the cellars of the Delaire Graff and neighbors. Give us your sense on this wine and what makes it such a triumph.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you again. It's always nice to be included in this beautiful top 10, and we're always very glad if we make it. But yeah, so Summercourt Chardonnay is a Chardonnay that it's a vineyard from our neighbor across the road from us. So we definitely share the same site. And yeah, Dan, what you mentioned about the Bannock Valley, Bannock is definitely known for Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon, but of course then Chardonnay is doing extremely well. Especially in this area, we have a lot of kind of a dark, rich alluvial soils that gives us a bit more of a warmness, a bit of a richness that we get in our wines in the valley. And of course, I think the interesting part is we get a little bit more rain than in Stellenbosch, and also, of course, our altitude plays a big role up here in the Bannock. We're about 2 weeks later than in Stellenbosch Valley, and I think that altitude, a combination of the soils, the right slopes, because of the mountainous area here in the Bannock, we tend to plant our Chardonnays on the cooler slopes. That's got beautiful acid retention, and so it's a great site for Chardonnay, and we get that kind of bright, fresh character in our Chardonnays in the valley, but then also a little bit of that little warmth, richness on the mid palate, which I think really kind of puts it apart from other Chardonnays in Stellenbosch.
We heard Christian talk about style and about interpretation and how the different Chardonnays over the years have changed a little. Do you feel at Delaire Graff you've now kind of found your feet, you found the space where both you as a winemaker coupled with the terroir you're getting your grapes from, you've got that happy medium in making Chardonnay work really well?
Yeah, I think if you look at the history of Delaire and Delaire Chardonnay, I mean, I remember as a youngster coming to Delaire when Rivera Arts won the Decanter prize for the best Nicholl Chardonnay. That was for 1997 vintage of Chardonnay. So we've always known that this is Chardonnay country, equally to that of Cab and Cab Franc. And yeah, so through the years of Delaire, definitely a big journey on Chardonnay, and I've learned a lot, and I think stylistically we've also changed a lot in how we approach it. But we do make 3 Chardonnays on this estate. We have a terrace block, which is kind of a small parcel of single vineyard Chardonnay, and that site is predominantly quite warmer. It's in full sun, so there's definitely taste in the wine, but not that richness. And then the Bannock Chardonnay, that's our kind of secondary stage Chardonnay, that's very much more focused on that kind of mineral, bright, crisp style. And of course, then Summercourt, the one that did well this year, is a style for very much the people who wants to kind of move away from the over aromatic acidic Sauvignon. It's just a nice alternative white wine for people, and I'm really happy with the style. It was very much inspired by my travels in Chablis and tasting all those beautiful wines from Chablis, and came back with the idea of just trying to make the wine a little bit different than just normal. And so we're very lucky, and it's a very nice style.
Oh, clearly the judges agree with you. What about the drinking public, though, Morné? You have a lot of guys come through your restaurants and through your tasting rooms at Delaire Graff, and they're drinking plenty of wine. Which of your Chardonnays is finding most favor with the majority of drinkers? What's the style that people are really leaning towards?
Yeah, I think we've got a bunch of smart sommeliers on the farm, and they really kind of they know that the summer court is more aperitif style, more fresh fruit forward. My personally, it's just like freshly steamed mussels, and that Chardonnay is fantastic. So I think the sommeliers they're quite smart to pair the three different styles of Chardonnay that we offer, and we take Chardonnay very serious on the estate. It's almost 40% of our plantings. So it's very exciting.
And if you're watching the show, I am sitting in the Middle East. My winemakers and wine judge extraordinaire are sitting back in the Cape and celebrating the Prescient Reports for Chardonnay and for Cabernet Sauvignon. When it comes to Chardonnay, our final winemaker is grinning because he's been a little greedy, taking not just one but two of the wines in the top 10. Jacques, congratulations and well done. Before I congratulate you, though, on winning two in the top 10, am I right? Jog my memory here. Was there a wedding quite recently that you might have been celebrating?
I've been married a month now. It all happened in the Elgin Valley about exactly 4 weeks ago. So it was a big party. We had a lot of good wine. It's been a month and it's been great. straight from honeymooning back into the vineyards, and we've got a lot of work out there. So it's quite a difficult time to be away from the farm.
Well, as all those of us who are married will be able to tell you, the honeymoon never ends, Jacques. It continues and continues. And it's definitely been given a little bit of a boost because a great reason to cheer. Not one, but two Chardonnays. Again, as I asked Alicia, was that something that caught you by surprise? Did not one, but two of them manage to do so well that they both featured in Christian's top 10?
We are... It's an amazing honor to be. I see Christian they corrected you. We got a third one as well, which we're very happy about. We are stoked. I think what was the surprise, and it's a positive for us, is the fact that our cheaper Chardonnay actually outscored the other two Chardonnays. Now we typically laugh when that happens, if a wine that's literally a quarter of the price outscores your top end stuff. But I think it's also evidence that there is a movement to enjoying Chardonnay with a lot of fruit purity, and I think people do like to put Chardonnay in a box of just sort of a lot of the flavors that you actually get from the barrel and not necessarily from the vineyard. So with our Beneath the Clouds, which is actually our top scoring Chardonnay, that's our entry level Chardonnay, great value for money wine that we actually use only old oak for, and even we've now started buying some 2,500 liter foudres for that, and also we include a small percentage of stainless steel fermentation. So the idea with the Beneath the Clouds is fruit purity and fresh acidity, and just having a wine that is quite mineral and but at the same time quite aromatic and expressive, and doesn't need barrels to really give it any sort of stylistic identity. And obviously our Groenlandberg is our flagship Chardonnay. We're very proud of that wine every year. It's a blend of two vineyards on the farm, so it's an estate wine. Our vineyards are now reaching very nice age as well, so these two blocks are both 14 years old now. The block is predominantly clone 548, which I really love. It's a fantastic quality clone in my opinion. And then our Tabula Rasa, which is single vineyard, single clone. That's where it gets really interesting from a viticultural point of view, and really expressing a single vineyard and a single clone on its own. That has been a real interesting journey to be on, and to be able to get to know our vineyards better. We started that project where we just bottled literally 600 or so bottles of a specific clone from a specific vineyard separately, and then we assess it over time in bottles. So it's been interesting, and I think it shows you how versatile the grape is. Anything from fresh aromatic fruit purity to something way more complex and concentrated that can stand up to 50% new oak, for example, on our Tabula Rasa range. It shows you how versatile the grape is, and also if you look at the results, it shows how Chardonnay does really well in all these regions. It's not confined to a cool climate like we have here. It can take slightly more heat and still make a fantastic world-class wine.
It is, of course, 3 in the top 10, but 2 with 94 points. And then one a mere 93 points, but completing an extraordinary trio of wine. And you make that point. I think it's a really good one, Jacques, about wine from all over the place. We're seeing grapes from Franschhoek, from Stellenbosch, from Elgin, from Constantia in this lineup in the top 10. And it's one of the delights of South African wine, isn't it? That we're not confined to a specific region just to make a specific wine. And as a result, the expressions we can deliver, whether it's you with different expressions just from Oak Valley or everybody collectively from different parts of South Africa, it gives us such a rich selection of wine, in this case Chardonnay, for us all to enjoy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think South African winemakers are also extremely adaptive. So we adapt to the vintage. In a warmer year, we pick earlier. We're not confined to traditional norms, and we don't make wine the way that our grandfathers made, because our grandfathers probably didn't make wine. So I think South African winemakers are very adaptive, but also we've got fantastic clonal material out there. That you can really customize to the conditions you have on your specific area. So, yeah, I think it's a very exciting time to be making Chardonnay, and I think something like Pinot Noir is maybe far less forgiving, but Chardonnay, in my opinion, is fantastic from most areas if you know what you're doing and you're farming it well.
Let's get a final word on Chardonnay from Christian as we look not just at our 3 winemakers today, but the wine that came in the top 10, the wine that came in for all of the entries. How healthy is South African Chardonnay at the moment in your book, Christian?
I think it's very healthy. And just listening to these guys and girls chat, the interesting thing for me is the sort of appreciation for fruit purity seems to be the term that everybody's using, and how to get that in the vineyard. It's always struck me that our white wines sort of come so naturally, and once again, I think Chardonnay shows that.
All right, well, let's say goodbye to Chardonnay on that high note and say hello to Cabernet Sauvignon. Again, it's a grape that's got plenty of history. But what about the present? What are you getting out of Cabernet Sauvignon at the moment? Where do you feel Cabernet Sauvignon is, Christian, based on what you guys saw as judges this year?
So, Dan, Cab was an absolute pleasure to judge. I'm happy to say. I think... And I was somewhat surprised, happily surprised. And the leaf roll virus has always been a challenge. But I think there's an appreciation that working with healthy vineyards is crucial. So again, we're seeing much better fruit definition amongst the top wines. And I think alongside that, there's an appreciation of what constitutes phenolic ripeness. So, and that is the product of much more astute viticulture. I think the producers are getting their picking dates really spot on. And so the resulting wines are very well balanced, and oak regimes are more sensitive. So, the very ripe, very oaky wines of yesteryear are much less in evidence. So I think Cab's in a really good place.
One final question before we go to the winemakers. Cabernet Sauvignon, by virtue of its style, its nature, is a wine we like to keep a little longer, let it soften out and find its feet. How does that affect the fact that you guys are judging wine that in many cases is only 2, 3, maybe 4 years old? Is there a sense of this is where I think it's going to go, or is it very much judged on where it is now and appreciating it as it is?
So judging red wine is more difficult than judging white wine, I think, because of those tannins. And tannin build-up over a flight of 50 or 60 or 70 cabs is a real factor. I think you are, as a judge, you're taking a view as to when you have to sort of imagine when it's going to be drinking at its best. You certainly don't want to be drinking very serious cab on release, I don't think. That said, I mentioned balance, and I think the wines are less big and bold, and that my intuition is that they will, as a result, last much longer because they are more balanced, and so it's quite exciting. I think there are quite a few wines that are going to be worth putting away for a good 5, 10, 15 years.
Well, let's go to the one that tops those lists of wines you want to collect and stow away if you can hold off from drinking them just yet. And that is off to Koelenhof, where we've got a best in category and a wine, the 1679 range. I think that's correct. First of all, congratulations and well done. How exciting is it when you get this sort of news and you know that you are your best of the lot? You are the very best Cabernet Sauvignon in a country, in a category where Cabernet Sauvignon is pretty competitive.
Hi, Dan. Yes. So we were very pleasantly surprised to get into the top 10, and not just the top 10, but to be best in category. I think when we started the Stellar 1679 range, we never thought it would do so well, and it's been a short while. It's done very well, especially the 2018 vintage as well. It was also in the top 10 Prescient Reports. So yeah, this is our second vintage on the cab, and when we started the range, I'll just show you the bottle. So yeah, this is our Stellar 1679. So we came up with the idea to start to a little bit more premium style of wine. As you know, Koelenhof, it's a cooperative seller, so we do bulk wines most of the time, and we do about 16,000 tons of grapes we're getting. So we just decided, listen, let's do something different. Let's try to a flagship wine and just deal with the premium grapes, deal with it, do the methods that we like to do in the cellar, just to improve on fruit and improve on everything that we can think of. And yeah, I think the end products are doing extremely well, especially with the cab. And as you say, it's a very competitive place to be, especially for bulk seller, because we are competing with the big quality estate wines and all that. So yeah, we are very, very grateful. And I think when at the event, when I tasted through the wines, there was a lot of cabs that were extremely good. And I said to our head winemaker Nicholl, I said, well, this is really a big privilege to just be on the top and just to show what Koelenhof can do as a winery as well.
You've struck a chord. You've got a lot of people very excited in your wine and in this 1679 range. We haven't featured this one in particular on the show. We have had the Chenin Blanc with your colleague Eugene in the not too distant past. You're going to have a lot of people wanting to try this now. You are the best of the report, so it's a very proud accolade to get. What do you think it is about this wine, about the grapes, about the style it's made, about the combination that's allowed you to come out on top?
Yes, like Christian said, I think it's a very well balanced wine. It's a full bodied cab, and it's still got the dark fruits, and you get some licorice, some blackberries through there, and also I think what's the traditional thing about cab, and it keeps the cab identity, is just a little bit of herbaceous freshness at the end, and that's always something I look for. A lot of people think when it gets too much herbaceousness, it's too much, it's not a good thing. But I think when it's just a little bit at the end, it just brings out freshness in the wine. and it gives it it can age for quite a long time as well. So also we use, I know there's a lot of wineries that use it, but we use a little like old school. We use rotor tanks. I'm a big fan of using rotor tanks. I think it's a very soft extraction from the grapes. You get the tannins through, and then straight after malolactic fermentation that we do in our cement tanks, so we take it into 2 to 5 liter brand new barrels for 2 years. And 2 years, it's a long time for the wine to be in barrels, but it's a very, very tight grain. So you get that prolonged extraction of wood throughout the 2 years, and it just softens the wine and balances it out quite good.
We mentioned to Christian the issue of age. That softness and balance is something that's caught the attention, I'm sure, of the judges, and it's making it a pleasure to drink now. How long for you, ideally, are we keeping this wine? If it's already got it done as well as it has now, how much better can it possibly get in years to come?
I think it can still improve a lot. I think it'll go on for 10 years as well. So it's just a big wine. So it has a lot of aging potential in that regard. So I think also what we try to do just to prolong wines, we do our acidity a little bit higher as well, and that just it brings out the acidic profile in the wine just to prolong the wine for aging as well.
All right, well, I'll be getting hold of some as soon as I am back in South Africa. Let's head over to another of our top performers, this time the Cavalli estate, heading down towards Somerset West, just off the R44. Eric, congratulations to you guys as well. Clearly a quite splendid wine. Great news for you guys to get, for the estate to get. What was the response from you and your team to this? And why do you feel that this is a wine that's really stood out?
Oh, thanks. First of all, it was quite a surprise. I don't think anybody really expected. But yeah, it was pleasantly surprised. Everybody was super excited when we got it. I think the brand is starting to establish itself as a serious cab producer. In the past, we mainly focused on Shennons, white varietals. But reds are starting to come into play. And I think the quality of the fruit on the farm is showing in the wine. So yeah, we're very excited for the future.
You mentioned the whites. I think the last time we had Cavalli on the show was talking about your Philly Shannon, which has also won a number of awards. The red that you've got, you sit looking up towards the Helderberg. What is it about where you guys are that's going to allow you to take this red wine direction and run with it and build on the success that you've got in the current Prescient Report?
Yeah, I think the fact that we're in the Golden Triangle helps a lot. I don't know how valid it is, but I think the soils on the farm is fantastic. We have a lot of sandy soil, especially in the cab, thick layer of clay at the bottom, so drainage is excellent. Attention to detail of the grapes is put a lot of work into the farming vineyard part. So and then I think it just shows in the cellar. We don't do a lot, try to be as natural as possible. But yeah, I think it comes down to quality fruit.
And possibly comes down to vintage. We mentioned vintage with the Chardonnay at the top of the show with Christian, and how that might have impacted the style that he was seeing there. What about with the reds? If we go back 2 years and then 2 years before, 2015, such a bombastic rock star of a year for so much Stellenbosch red. 2017, also an outstanding year, but with a little more finesse perhaps, and a wine that it was a bit of a slow burner, but is now turning into something magnificent. How does 2019 compare to those past two vintages? And is this another one that in a few years' time we're going to be hoarding the year away and desperately looking for bottles from 2019?
Well, I hope so. I think Christian mentioned it earlier in the backroom chat. I think that late rain that we got in March forced a lot of people to pick a bit earlier. That's why the alcohol's a little bit lower. But I think it was optimal picking conditions for us then. And the drought from the previous years made it quite a tough thing. As we all know, the cab likes to struggle a little bit, and that is its best years. So we got quite a low yield that year. It's about 9 tons a hectare, which is not that bad, but not what the block usually gives us. But concentration of fruit was, like I said, amazing. We did a little extra bleeding in the cellar just to concentrate a little bit more. But yeah, I think 2019 was an exceptional year, especially for Eedes.
We're seeing 3 2019s with our Cabernet Sauvignon that we're focusing on at the moment. Before we jump over to the third of those and go back to someone we've already chatted to on the show, similar question to the one I have just asked Handre. It's obviously a really nice wine at the moment. What's the potential of this 29 Cabernet Sauvignon, Eric?
I definitely think it can go like 9-10 years more. It was tannins is very well integrated in the bottle. It is fruit forward, so I think it can still carry another 9 or 10 years, definitely.
All right. Yeah, the only downside of doing these shows is more and more wine I need to go shopping for and add to the collection. But happily so. Let's jump back to Delaire Graff and to Morné. After telling us very authoritatively that you could make some really good Chardonnay, you can now do the same on the Cabernet Sauvignon, which is, of course, no surprise. Another award, this time for the red. Tell us a bit about this particular wine, Morné, and what you feel makes it stand out.
Dan, thank you again. Yeah, it's 2019 Cab. It's been for me a big surprise, and I mean, we've up here in the Bannock, I think we experienced a different vintage, and it was I've been making wine from that particular vineyard now for the last 16 years, and the 2019 vintage was like working with a stranger. If you looked at the vintage itself, it was for me very bizarre. We had quite a cool summer. We had early autumn kicked in, and temperatures just plummeted, and soil temperature dropped, and the vineyard was just kind of going into hibernation mode, whilst the sugar levels were at 12.5 potential alcohols. I think that kind of slowed down the ripening, and I think if the guys with a bit of leaf roll had problems, because there wasn't the factory was like much slower, and the ripening and phenolic ripeness just happened much slower, which was fantastic. So we didn't particularly pick early. We picked quite late, but unfortunately also we had the threat of rain. And I know if we get rain quite late in the season that we need to rather pick earlier, just because of the potential slip skin and that kind of the dilution that you get that never comes back because of us being quite high in altitude, that our fruit tend to not recover well after a 10-15 millimeter rain spell. So it was definitely for me the untypical vintage. I was really kind of nervous tasting the wines, but yeah, I'm very lucky. I mean, very happy. At the end, we did a lot of work tasting and selecting the barrels. So traditionally, we do quite 7,000 bottles. This was only a 5,000 bottle blend, just because of my experience with the vintage, which I was quite surprised now tasting the wines. 19s, I bought my scoop, all our 19s. I should have just been patient. The wines are only now opening up. They're only now showing the true colors. And yeah, so I'm always very happy. I mean, Delaire and Cab is phenomenal. So we've been making good Cab here on the farm, and it's this beautiful plot of land we have here on the estate. So of course I'm very excited. I mean, it's fantastic, and it just tastes the wine, and we all were like, yes, are we putting the right wine in the bottle? But it's quite nice to see how different we are and how little we know actually that other people taste the wine and it tastes fantastic.
We've spoken earlier about the transition of Chardonnay and how the interpretation has changed a lot, the style has changed a lot. Cabernet Sauvignon on the broader Stellenbosch space, and it's a far-ranging one to talk about, but have you seen an evolution of Cabernet Sauvignon? Has it changed much, or have we by and large been pretty consistent over the last stretch?
I think it's super exciting where we are with Cabernet at the moment. First of all, I think we are picking at lower ballings and lower alcohols, which is fantastic. There's an element of freshness and a brightness that's coming out these days in the wine. I think people are getting used to that. People probably saw as negative herbaceous characters as quite a positive character in a lot of areas. And unfortunately, Cab do show quite rough, quite weedy, quite vegetative on the lighter kind of side of oaking. Unfortunately, good Cabernet, Stellenbosch Cab needs a good dollop of new oak. It helps with the structure, it helps with the balancing of the fruit and balance of the aromatics. And yeah, I'm very excited. I mean, we've been exposed to good Cabernets all over, and I mean, I'm super excited with Stellenbosch are as a category, and also some other areas, the Durbanville area. There's some beautiful cabs coming from there. They're very exciting. I think it's similar to that of Chardonnay. I think viticulture is also start to realize how to farm some of the more challenging sites, and leaf row definitely we still see and experience that in some of the wines, but it's definitely not becoming. It's not as kind of hectic as it was, say, 10 years ago. So I'm very excited.
As is the entire selection of feedback from our 2 reports through the show today. Let's get a final word from each of our winemakers before we head back to Christian. Alicia, we mentioned earlier, Backsberg, lots of changes, lots of exciting times, not just in the branding, but in the ownership with DGB, with the new tasting space, but with a lot happening. Give us a sense, looking ahead, 2023, what can we expect? What's getting you really excited about this new direction for Backsberg?
The selection of vineyards and fruit that I had to work with was already in this harvest. It was incredible, very different. That's why it feels like I've almost have the opportunity. I've been making wine also now for 22 years, and it gets long, and it's great to be on an estate and you know your vineyards and you start to get comfortable, but being thrown in a situation where all of a sudden, every single vineyard you have to work with new, and I try and keep consistency where it's needed, but to improve where it's needed. And it was very interesting, and I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying being in another space. The cellar is done over and it's new, but it's still all my old equipment, my old press, my old tanks, everything came with. It's just in another space. And yeah, I love working with all the new fruits and the new sites. Very exciting. I think I'm getting, I want to say, I was worried about it, but the vineyards it's better than I'm used to. It's nice. Yeah.
That's so lovely to hear. I think I'm overdue a return visit to the venue of my wedding. Sure. 2011, time has flown by. Look out also at the moment for Backsberg, their Petrarch Cabernet Franc, which is a particularly exciting wine from the ones I have tasted of late. Let's head up to our skipping, smiling, laughing, dancing newlywed for whom life has never been better or more wonderful or more perfect, and steer him away from married life and back into the world of wine. 2023 and the horizon at Oak Valley. Jacques, what are we looking at? What's got you particularly confident for the time ahead?
Yeah, Dan, it's looking great out there. I'm very surprised. Every vintage is different, obviously, and every single one will throw a curveball at you. But so far things are looking fantastic out there. It was a drier winter than what we typically experience. Typically we get a bit of rain through the season in Elgin as well. But so far it's been incredibly dry. But yet the humidity is quite high, so we've seen quite a lot of vigor out there. But incredibly healthy everything at this stage. We're super excited. We've got some more young vines coming into production. We've been planting quite a bit of Chardonnay and Pinot only on the farm. That's the direction we're going in, and we've got some young vines coming into production every vintage. So that's always really exciting, and obviously one more year that our vines are getting older, and that's really exciting always to see vines reaching a decent age. And besides that, it's going to be same old. It's so far the crop looks quite well balanced. We're in the middle of flowering on most of our cultivars still, but the Chardonnay and Pinot is just now through flowering, so we can get a sense of what the crop is looking like, and it's looking decent. So we're quite happy, and we're looking forward to yet another fantastic Elgin vintage, hopefully.
And 2023, maybe 4 in the top 10. I mean, 3, I think you can do a little bit better. Great. Chardonnay. You are newly married. I don't think Eric has been married too much longer than you. I think you're also a 2022 wedding to celebrate. So perhaps the two of you can trade some notes. But in terms of trading notes on wine, Eric, taking away from this success, from having a look at what's gone right for 2022, and obviously there is a fair lot that has gone right. How's that shaping your look at 2023 and beyond?
I mean, crop is looking generous out there. So I think crop control will be ideal for us later in the season. And we recently slimmed down the whole range. So on all the tiers. So it's becoming more focused, and I think we have a sense of place now where we want to go and where we are currently. So exciting stuff coming from Cavalli in the next few years.
That's it's something we're seeing from a number of people, just trimming down, focusing, being a little more precise. I think it's a great way to go. It helps us as consumers, but it also sees us get the best out of our estates, and we've seen that with this particular wine. Handre, what about you guys? Because your focus has always been bulk, as you say, but now you're starting to win awards. You're doing really well with this 1679 range. Does that mean you bump it up? Do you give a bit more focus to this part of the business? How does it change your future?
Yeah, so obviously, to getting all the awards, it brings a little bit more attraction to our more entry-level wines, and that is also something we are looking for. We're not just focusing on the premium side. We can do a lot of quantity as well. So luckily, all the awards, like I said, it brings attraction to those ones as well. And for next year, I'm already getting the pre-harvest jitters. It's about that time of year. You're starting ready to get ready for all the things, doing all the preparations, all the machinery. And I think there's a lot of farmers we've got a lot of producers I speak to a lot of farmers, and a lot of the farmers, they say it looks like a bigger yield, but we also thought it was a bigger yield last year. And as we all know, it wasn't that big. The weight just wasn't there. So I think this year we're just going to wait until the tractor's over the scale, and then we're going to see what the yields look like. So I think quality-wise looks very good. I think we can do with a little bit more rain. It's been a little bit dry this season, especially when you go looking in the depths of the soil. It's a little bit dry, but yeah, I think everything. Whereas Koelenhof's, we're trying to build, and we're trying to do new things. We have this year, or the end of last year, we built a new play park at the cellar. So we're doing a lot of things just to attract people to the cellar, and I think it's a great idea to get the kids playing while their parents drink a glass of wine. It's always fun and games. And with the premium range, we're just gonna keep on building. I think we're gonna keep the quantities. We're gonna keep the same. We don't want to grow too much with the quantity side on the premium range. So we're keeping it the same. We're just trying to build on quality and obviously preserve what we have, and just move on from there.
Yet another estate with a really exciting year to look ahead for in 2023. If you haven't tried that 1679 range, it's in its relative infancy, but already having quite an impact. Speaking of impact, Christian, as we wrap up, we talk about vintages, and rightly so, and we look back on particular years. But if we look at 2022 as a wine year, and we will sum it up with you at the end of the year when you join us back on the show for wines of 2022, but just the year as a whole, with the wine industry coming out of some really, really challenging times. We've had Cape Wine this year. We've had the Shannon Congress. We've had the introduction of some new investors into South African wine. I'm feeling pretty upbeat about this year and how it's gone for South African wine. Is that a sentiment possibly fueled by the wine you've tasted on these latest reports that you would share?
Dan, I mean, in general, I think South African wine just goes from strength to strength, certainly at the top end. I mean, we do have a massive structural issue when it comes to bulk wine, and we shouldn't overlook that. As for 22, what actually happened in the vineyard, I think it's early days. It's difficult to say. The feedback I'm getting is that the early ripening grapes, it was quite warm initially, and acidities in the early ripening grapes weren't that fantastic. And but that the wines are quite accessible, quite immediately accessible. As for the later ripening grapes, it's still some time before those hit the market. And apparently, from what I gather, the vintage cooled down. So that bodes well. If 19 benefited from being, if Cab benefited from a sort of cooler, slightly wetter end to the harvest, then maybe that'll be the case again in 22. But it's quite interesting now. If odd vintages seem to be shaping really, really well, 15, 17, 19, and 21. And then the even vintages are slightly lesser. It's an interesting pattern that's developing,
which we shall continue to watch and to follow, and to do so with expert advice from the likes of Christian, whose work can be found. He does about 17 wine reviews a day. I'm not sure where he finds the time, at winemag.co.za with all of the reports. And we'll have you back, Christian, if we can squeeze into your diary at the end of the year, to not just look at your wines of the year, but also talk about your winery of the year, which will include when we have you back on the show next month. Before I say goodbye to all of our winemakers, just a quick reminder of the Dan Really Likes Wine charity auction that comes up this Monday night. If you can't be with us at Strauss in Johannesburg, then you can join us online at Strauss Art. That is at 7 o'clock on Monday night. We've got about 40 odd lots from some fine winemakers, Delaire Graff amongst them. We've got some really cool stuff, and all of the money raised, they're going to Reach for a Dream, as well as the Pinotage Youth Development Academy. If you want to go and spend a weekend with 8 friends at Tybosh in their luxury villa, or have a weekend away at Plaisir or at Bartony, buy a 9-litre bottle of award-winning Constantia Glen. There's a Villa Fonte selection, wine and dinner out at Newton Johnson with Pete Goffwood. It's a really cool selection for 2 extremely good causes. So tickets and web tickets if you're in Johannesburg. Otherwise, do join us online at 7 o'clock on Monday evening. Guys, thank you. Christian, in principle, to you and Jax and the team at WineMag. You are a small but formidable team, and providing these reports is such a rich resource for South African wine. And as we can see from all of our guests, we know how much it means to them to be included amongst their peers and to be recognized by such a fine team of judges. And to our winemakers, Alicia in the new look Backsberg, for which I have such fondness, flying a very proud flag with that Chardonnay. The newly married Jacques, who's promised to call his first little one Dan, in honor of the show. Eric at Cavalli, Handre with Koelenhof, that's proudly and excitingly spreading into new territory, and Morné Vrey, the red-capped genius down at Delaire Graff. Guys, thank you all. Congratulations on some wonderful wine, some very well-deserved accolades, and doing such a terrific job. Enjoy the weekend as it kicks in, and I'm sure we're going to be seeing all of you back again soon with many, many more awards. To all of our winemakers and to Christian WineMag, guys, thank you very much for joining us. Much, much appreciated.
Thank you.
There we go. The reports from Prescient, the Chardonnay report and the Cabernet Sauvignon report, chaired by Christian Eedes, and they're a selection of our top performers. Morné at Delaire Graff getting into both lists, 3 different Chardonnays out of Oak Valley, making a very good case to be our top Chardonnay producer in the country out in Elgin, alongside some more great Stellenbosch Cabernet Sauvignon and some Franschhoek Chardonnay out of Backsberg. And that does it for today. Monday's show will be live from Strauss Art as we preview that auction before it kicks off. We'd love to see you there if you're in Johannesburg, and if not, then online for 2 wonderful, wonderful causes. I am off to rejoin the Laureus Challenge 2022 with Force for Good and Sierra Space. We're currently in Ras Al Khaimah on the very northern tip of the United Arab Emirates, raising money for another great cause in the Laureus Sport for Good Foundation. And I'm sure before the day is out, finding a rather nice glass of wine or 2 to see off the heat of the Middle East. Thanks for supporting. Make sure you do get over to winemag.co.za. Christian Jackson, their team do a terrific job. They're a wonderful resource for South African wine. And as you've seen today, they bring together some outstanding South African producers, some outstanding South African wines, and put them all in a very well-deserved spotlight. That does it for today. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday and into the weekend. Keep drinking great South African wine. We'll see you on Monday. Goodbye. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events. Discount on a case of wine and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.